Welcome to Valuations and Succession Planning for Car Dealers, where two industry experts take a deep dive into the world of dealership valuations and the strategies that can drive growth and success. In this series, Dan Iosue, a succession planner with the Rawls Group, and Scott Womack, Senior Vice President of Mercer Capital, will cover a wide range of topics, including the fundamentals of valuations, industry trends, best practices, and common challenges faced by car dealers. Here we go.
Previous episodes, we talked about triggering events. Unfortunately, when there is conflict with the idea around business agreements, maybe certain elements that we've preached about in other episodes of having formal documents, clear and transparent terms, consistent terms, maybe those weren't followed through, and that's what led to the conflict. So I can't stress the point enough is addressing those points on the front end with regard to buy-sell agreements, terms. And so those buy-sell agreements really need to have, we call it a defined process, but they may lay out how the process is going to be conducted. Sometimes they'll even go as far as to say, we want you to select an appraiser with certain certifications. Some of them go even as far as we want, Scott Womack with Mercer Capital to do it. So we love those, obviously, selfishly. We try to advise dealers to avoid formulas. Certainly blue sky is a buzz term in the industry. It's something that drives market multiples. But those multiples in value can be dynamic over time. So we wouldn't want to see a 10-year-old agreement that said, hey, we're valuing this at 2 times when it might be a brand or a manufacturer that has increased tremendously in value, and where that's just stale or not the best representative of value. And then the other thing, we can talk about standards of value. We're talking fair market value, which is hypothetical willing buyer, willing seller. In the layperson's terms, fair market value tends to reflect discounts if they're applicable for lack of marketability and control. So if your conflict arises around a 10% interest, right, that bundle of rights around the interest probably doesn't have elements of control and marketability. And so then we get into potential discounts. If it's not defined, fair value is sort of another concept. It's more of a pro rata value standpoint. So in an example where you had a dealership that's worth $1 million, a 10% interest in a fair value context would be 10% of the million or 100,000. And so ambiguity around those terms only leads to conflict and litigation on the back end. Dan, how about yourself? What do you see in this arena?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point of view, Scott, in that, you would, I think, have a lot more visibility into the specific and the technical as it relates to the differences in fair market value in determining fair market value certainly on at any point in time, and coming in to circumstances where things haven't gone well, as you said, or haven't been clarified on the front end, and coming into situations that are that have become litigious. You talked about you mentioned you mentioned formula, and we are also not proponents of a formula driven value, and just generally, and we're not attorneys either, but generally we are in favor of flexibility within to a certain extent within agreements that allow for real world changes in circumstances, and that formula driven approach certainly does not take into, we think, consideration of a lot of different things that can determine value. And we think someone who's got expertise in automotive, and as I think you mentioned, credited, and we're gonna spell that out exactly to the extent that we're able to on the front end. And we've seen some situations where if there is disagreement, then okay, let's talk about if there is a disagreement on the valuation between parties, how is that going to be handled? Let's an example of that would be, well, sometimes there's an agreement to get another firm to perform valuation, and split, and if they're within a certain range of each other, split the difference, meet halfway, or we're going to get two firms, valuation firms, to pick a third firm. There's all kinds of different ways to approach that. But the point is we want to spell out exactly what's going to happen there, and not leave it up for grabs. So yeah, you bring up a lot of great points. Scott, it's interesting to hear your point of view, and certainly that formula-driven approach we've seen, lock people into circumstances that have not provided that that flexibility, if you will, on the way out when they need it.
Yeah, and Dan, I appreciate your comments and agree with them in terms of sort of industry. We talk about certifications and things like that. I think we would all agree that the auto industry is unique enough with the financial statements, the terminology, and the lingo, to the extent that evaluation needs to be conducted. I think try to avoid evaluation generalists maybe that would sort of approach this as kind of a cookie cutter industry approach, and maybe use in our profession EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation. So that's a market kind of multiple area that a lot of people talk in. It's not necessarily all that relevant in the auto dealer space. And so if you had someone that wasn't familiar with the industry that said, all right, I'm just going to do this and pick 3 to 5 times EBITDA and not really even investigate or explain, what the blue sky, either multiple or value is, I think would be a common mistake to avoid here.
This is only one out of our 12 episode series focused on dealership valuations and the strategies that can drive growth and success. Continue listening to the series now or come back for more. Each topic featured may want you to learn something new. Succession planning allows you to create more control over the future you envision by proactively addressing possible, probable, and potential issues impacting your goals. Do you have a question you want to discuss with an expert? Feel free to reach out directly to Dan or Scott at the email addresses listed on the screen. Valuations and Succession Planning for Car Dealers is a part of the Rawls Group's Advancing Your Business, People, and Legacy Conversation series.